In this video, I'll be covering strengthening exercises and lifestyle habits to adapt if you have a tight upper back and neck from sitting all day. In the last video, we covered warm-ups and stretches that you could do. If you haven't checked it out already, check it out over here. So we're going to start with the strengthening drills. Obviously, you want to warm up and stretch a little bit first. Then you want to strengthen, because what's going to happen is if you're sitting down all day, the anterior chain, the front of your body, is going to tighten up. So we're going to want to open that up, but also strengthen the posterior chain at the back of your body. So my first favorite is glute bridges and variations of it. If you have limited hip extension, glute bridges can actually be a bit bothersome in that you feel your lower back and your quads instead of your glutes. So if that's the case, this is one of the tests that you might be doing to check it, but be sure to look into that in a little bit more depth because otherwise you might need to do adaptations of this exercise. So simple glute bridges are usually just push your into your heels and make a nice straight line from your knee, hip, to shoulder. So here I'm tucking my hips under and squeezing my glutes. Instead of simply going up with my hips, where my hips could be a bit dipped, I'm making sure that they're tucked under. So that's one of the major cues you can use. But if you find this difficult and it's like already stretching, then you can use spine curls. So glute bridge spine curls are a nice way to start working on your pelvic tilt and spinal control into the glute bridge. But also, if you say you're already tucked under and you're kind of stuck here and that's your max, but you are feeling it here, that's fine. You don't have to necessarily go all the way up there. But yeah, one of the variations is glute bridge spine curls. It's also really nice because your spine has probably been very stiff all day from sitting. So you have an ability now to incorporate some spinal segmentation and some glute bridges all in one go. So the second variation I really like is the glute bridge leg to chest. I named that myself. I'm pretty sure that's not the actual name of it. But the whole point of this is that you work on your core and hip stability as you do this. And the other leg, the glute, should burn up like crazy. So you're staying with your hips as high as possible. You're bringing your leg back down, readjusting a touch to stay high with the hips. And you'll do like 10 to 12 reps on one leg like this, creating stability. Quite a lot more difficult than it looks. And then between legs, try to take at least a little breather, something like 30 seconds to a minute so that you can rest, recover, and then you get to do the other side, hopefully with the same amount of feeling. And the nice thing about these two is that if there is a slight imbalance and you feel like one side is stronger than the other, one side is tighter than the other, you can work on that. So my second favorite exercise is the half bridge, which is quite intense on shoulder extension. So if you have a limitation in shoulder extension, this might not be possible, and you might want to simply do a passive stretch where you're just chilling out and getting into your end range without allowing your shoulders to hunch forward. You're going to pin them back and down and get that stretch right here. And then once you've done that stretch for a few minutes and you feel comfortable, you can push down into the ground with your hands this way. And you can do isometric contractions. So usually I'll do something like 10 seconds times 3. So that's your regressed version. The advanced version is your half bridge, and it doesn't actually matter which direction your hands are as long as you're comfortable. You're going up into what's very similar to a glute bridge. You're trying to create that nice straight line between the knees, the hips, and the shoulders. But now, of course, you're in this position, which is a little bit tougher. So it's a nice sort of dynamic exercise that you could do body weight only, especially if you're doing like a nice quick 5-minute movement break from your desk. So the next exercise is swimmers. We're going to do this in 3 variations, easy, intermediate, and hard. And this is going to help you open up your chest a little bit, engage your thoracic extension, so you're going to be coming up with your thoracic extension but leaving the lumbar behind. And we're going to be engaging all the muscles at the back. So we're going to tuck the hips under, squeeze the glutes, push the ribs down, so you're kind of like in a plank position here. And the first variation, which is nice and easy, is we're simply lifting up with our hands in like a Y position. So you can have your elbows a little bit lower, a little bit higher, somewhere around here where you're comfortable. You're going to pin your shoulders back so they're not rounding forward, and you're simply lifting up with the thoracic and then back down. And you can start with these They're nice and easy. So something around 10 reps, 3 sets. And then if you find that bearable, then you can do the harder version where we are going to be coming up, reaching overhead and coming back down. So my upper back is already engaging and I'm getting quite a bit of thoracic extension out of that. So the even harder variation of that is where you're going to start with your arms out straight, same position, tucking the hips under, squeezing the glutes, pushing the ribs down. You're going to thoracically extend and look up. Then you're bringing your elbows down, forward, and then back down. So thoracic extension, bringing the elbows to your back pockets, reaching overhead, and then back down. All right, so the last variation is with wrist weights. These are just 1 kilo. That is plenty with this position. So again, you can start from the beginning, doing the easy variations, then the harder. And then finishing up with the even hardest. So just with what I showed you, you've got about 6 variations that you can work your way up to. So the other thing I really recommend is rows of any kind. You can do a TRX or a ring row. You can do a 1-arm row with a band or a dumbbell. This is all easily doable next to your desk, essentially. And this is just going to help open up the chest and engage all the muscles on the back again. So the other thing I really want to emphasize is shoulder rotation, and you can start again with many different levels. So the first one will be adducted shoulder axial rotations, and I would be starting with something like 3 times 10 reps of these. So the next variation up from that would be the Cuban rotation, and you can do this eventually with weights like a barbell or dumbbells, but I would recommend starting with something very small or even no weights at all. So I'm going to just use 1 kilo as a demonstration. My elbows are going to be in line with my shoulders, 90-degree angles, and I'm simply rotating. So I'm bringing my hands down, and then I'm coming up into external rotation, kind of like the end part of a face pull. Okay, so for the advanced variation that I am a really big fan of, as it helps to strengthen your rotator cuff as well, is a dumbbell rotation. So I'm going to use this, but that's the lightest weight I have, but I would recommend starting very, very, very light, as these muscles are quite tiny and often not trained. So you can also start body weight only to begin with. So you're resting your elbow on your knee and you are rotating externally and then controlling it down, not letting that just drop. And also if your shoulder starts rotating forward as you do that, you know you need to stop before that happens. And if you feel pain anywhere at all, if you feel pain anywhere at all, you just want to avoid that range, so just reduce the range of motion. So the strength drills I just showed you aren't necessarily supposed to be done in that exact order or in that volume. I'm simply showing you an example of what I would incorporate perhaps over the week several times to try to open up my anterior chain and strengthen my posterior chain if I am crouched over a laptop. And you can also be very specific with what you pick. So I wouldn't want you to just pick any one of those and try to go through all of them. Because you need to be aware if your joint range of motion matches the exercise that you have chosen, and that's where joint assessments can help. The next thing, which I think is very underrated, is lifestyle changes. So one of the things I definitely recommend to all of my clients is to switch positions often. So I know it's often said that, oh, this is really, really bad for you, but it's really not if you do that for a short amount of time. What's really bad for you is staying in one position constantly, because your body is constantly adapting and it's constantly taking in information. So if you're constantly sat down, that becomes the new normal, and it's very, very hard to open up from that. And also, likewise, standing up all day can be uncomfortable for some people. So I would say if you have a stand-up desk and a sit-down desk, something that moves between, that's a fantastic option. And also different positions generally. So don't worry about if you're, say, sitting there a little bit like this, a little bit like this, a little bit like this. Maybe then you're going to sit on a chair like a normal position, then stand up. It doesn't really matter as long as you're not stuck in one position for a huge amount of time. And then the second thing I really recommend is movement breaks. So if that means stopping every hour or every 2 hours for a short walk or a 5-minute follow along, we've got 5-minute cars, 5-minute little short movement break follow alongs that I'll somehow link below or somewhere in the video, so you can just choose those if you like. The point is moving your body, especially your joints, through their full range of motion a few times a day, especially when you're sat down, can make a huge difference. And the third thing I recommend is doing a time lapse of your workspace, which could be a bit strange. But the point is, when you see the time lapse, you might see yourself repeatedly look over on one shoulder, and then suddenly you'll understand why your neck is cranked up on one side. So you might want to simply change your monitor or change the book that you're looking at to a different position so that you don't end up constantly having one side tighter than the other. Another thing is, if the time lapse isn't that clear, or if you're not sure what you're looking for, you can just simply get a joint assessment. We offer them on our website. If you want more information, just head to the online coaching section of the website. There should be a button about joint assessments there. I hope you found this useful. If you did, please subscribe and comment below anything you'd like to see next. I will also be planning a video on what to do when you sit down all day and your hips and lower back get tight. So if you have any particular questions on that, please drop them below.